international guests, our special guests, the children to this conference, good morning. I want to take this opportunity to welcome each and every person to this very important conference. And before I make my remarks, I would want to request the children to give their presentation.
In Kenya, we have many children, many people with special needs. And in our school, we have a special unit where we take care of children with special needs. We have examples are the visually impaired, emotionally and behaviorally impaired. And in my school, Kasarani Primary, we always play with them and make them feel at home. Even in the assembly point where we meet, they always come when we sing, when they clap, we clap. And we treat them very well and they feel like they are home. And they are always honored and they are respectful and also kind.
So I hope that this is going to be the spirit that we are together going to confront this immense challenge of our times, to have every child in the classroom and learning. We know that around 250 million of the children attending schools today are doing so without learning. But we know that of all those that have disabilities, those that are not learning are around 91%. We see this reflected in our KCSE results, in our KCPE results here in Kenya, and we have a big question to answer. What is it that we can do differently? Because doing more of the same thing is not going to deliver different results. So I wish that we will have an assignment, all of us, that by the end of tomorrow as we go home, each of us will have answered one question. What is it that I'm going to do differently?
Today, the most important thing is equity to our children. Our children are a gift from God. It is the reason that we wake up every morning. It is the reason that those of us who are seated here today are seated not because of the offices that we hold, but we are seated first as parents and parents to all our children, and realizing that all our children require to achieve and attain their full potential. And I would want to add, and I know Kise is here, KICD is here, is that we are looking at our teacher education curriculum. As we look at the curriculum, and that as we face out P1 teachers towards going to diploma education in our teachers in primary schools, that the issue of special education should be included in the curriculum for everybody who goes through our teachers training colleges, so that everybody who comes out of our training institutions will have been prepared to a large extent, and that they will only be able to go to Kise to be able to upscale that training to the next level. Madam CS, I will not want to go beyond that point. It's now my humble duty to invite you to address ourselves, launch the survey, and officially open this conference. Thank you very much. Very grateful.
This forum, ladies and gentlemen, is an opportunity for us to share best practices on the provision of special education to learners and trainees with special needs. The objectives of this conference are to exchange ideas on the current research activities on inclusive education, explore different approaches and practices on the same, and discuss strategies of enhancing education for all. The theme of the conference, Inclusive Education, Strategies for Enhancing Access, Equity, Quality, and Opportunities for All. Ladies and gentlemen, I think many of us know that in fact the government of Kenya is fully committed to providing education to all our children, and especially those with special needs and disabilities. Now, the commitment of government is clearly demonstrated in the allocation of resources to the Ministry of Education. In the current financial year, for example, close to 2 billion has been disbursed in support of education of learners with special needs. At the primary education level, each child is provided with 1,420 shillings per year as capitation, while a child with special needs is provided with 3,720 per year. It's actually more than double what is provided for other children. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I'd like to say the following. Apart from encouraging you to actually exchange very, very candidly and share good practices, share great ideas in order for us to actually empower persons with special needs and disabilities. And I will offer all the support that is required to make sure that we actually realize the mandate that has been given to all of us, but more importantly, that we ensure that this constitutional right that all children have is fully realized. Our vision as a ministry has been laid out by the Principal Secretary, Dr. Bilo Kipsang, who has told us that our dream is to ensure that all institutions in our country and hopefully in our region will enroll children with special needs, will ensure that they actually have, we will ensure that they cater for this group of our citizens, but also, more importantly, that all teachers in all our institutions will also become teachers of children with special needs. They will all become special needs children. I think if we actually realize that vision, then we will truly have the inclusive education that we want. We will have the equitable society that we are all hoping to develop. Ladies and gentlemen, having said all that, and knowing full well that I can't say everything that I'd like to say this morning, it is now my pleasure to declare this conference on inclusive education officially opened and to declare the National Survey on Disabilities and Special Needs officially launched. Thank you very much.
By Alex Perry in an interesting 2015 book called The Rift, A New Africa Breaks Free. He suggests that Africa is nearing the end of an epic quest for freedom that will revolutionize perceptions of it and change the world. It is this statement that I want to base my arguments today, and I strongly believe Perry is right. That in its quest for freedom, perceptions of Africa will change to the rest of the world, and it will offer something others will want to emulate. In terms of my arguments today, I suggest this is around the concept of inclusion in the African context and how inclusive education can be achieved here if we apply this African notion of inclusion. This is the focus of my paper today. The key strength in African communities is attitude, an attitude of justice and fairness, social cohesion, compassion, sharing, Ubuntu. Unless, of course, we seem to have lost this because of globalization, competition, self-pursuits, etc. We should return to this notion of inclusion, which is about sharing knowledge, resources, and attending to the needs of all. Physical accessibility, I observe schools being proactive in addressing this barrier. The principal of the school in the rural community in South Africa didn't wait for the Department of Education. He took it upon himself to get donations of cement from a local company and then elicited the help of fathers from the community to build ramps at every single classroom. It was not perfect, but it was good enough for students in wheelchairs to access the classrooms. And finally, it is suggested that Africans have struggled for Ubuntu, a collective shared humanist and social ethics against oppression to maintain group cohesion. But the struggle is not over. Ushirikishwaji Sheikh.
When you define inclusion in the Kenyan way, you used the term ushirikishwaji. It's about involvement. It's about engaging people with disabilities themselves as you push the inclusive agenda.
In your presentation so far, you have not really mentioned about, in your proposals, you have not said whether the county governments should be included.
Explain me more about this statement. Inclusive education in Africa is a fight for freedom. Thanks.
Here in Africa, like I said in my paper, we have been part of oppression with colonization. You know, I come, like I said, I came from South Africa with apartheid. Yeah, I understand what exclusion means. And so in Africa, we are always being seen as the underdog. You know, where nothing happens. There's no development.
Thank you very much, Dr. Solution Papa. We appreciate it. Now, can we please applaud her?
The theory we applied social model theory. This theory says, like many people who are brought here, that it is the society that disciples persons with disability. It's not that disability. It's the thing, the environment which is very inclusive, exclusive. So if we want to include these students with disabilities in our system, so we have to make the environment inclusive.
It's very important to utilize the local resources. So our project was also very much based on this kind of principle. Instead of only providing funding and knowledge from outside, we did try very hard to support the local professionals, local experts to utilize their own knowledge and expertise.
According to the National Bureau of Statistics, they are talking of about 1.3 million persons with disability. And then going to my area of research, we find that all the adults who are enrolled in adult literacy programs are almost 3,000 in Vihiga County, but only 104 adults with disabilities are enrolled in Vihiga County.
Practice is very important. You know, that's the correct practice. That's the power that the schools use in order, or leader, to actually reinforce inclusion. The structure and systems is also very important. The management and leadership. So let's look at the ethos, values. This is it has to be shared. It's not something only lies on the leader, but also it has to be a vision or kind of values that are shared by the rest of the team.
We have that Innovate Kenya program. It's a special laboratory with all these facilities where we are able to assist people to be rehabilitated after they had all the problems. It helps, we use technology to bring back the skills which you had, and maybe you have got this particular impairment.
We want to find a method that we can use to teach across all the students, and it's going to help them. That topic, that method is maybe if we use animations, is it going to improve? And that's the objective is to come up with animations that can be used to make loci, which is part of geometry, students be in a position to pass.
Despite the opportunities available in the ideal world, that is the world that is supposed to be through assistive technologies, the real digital world for persons with disabilities is presented with limited access, and by our focus to digital equality rather than equity.
There is a need to use ICT to address the functional limitations that are being experienced by the persons with disabilities, and we think that it's possible to use it for creating positive attitudes, that's addressing the negative attitudes that are common in our society, particularly in the African context.
The whole sense on how to report disability stories. So I need to come up with a manual and then make a conference. But I also need partners. So every time I talk to UPDK, National Council, or any person, they say they don't have money. They don't have money. So if we don't even create resources for media, who do we think will create resources to train journalists to report matters?
It is about accepting our children as they are and ensuring that we have accepted them and have totally looked at the needs, instead of looking at the discrimination and stereotyping that comes with it. There are so many myths in our African culture. And you know, it's us, the society, that says that child has a disability because they don't know, right?
It is a reality that in society we've got brothers and sisters with special needs. So before we even go to think of favors, before we go to think of delegating, before we go to think of all these other issues, let's first accept that it is norm to discuss these issues. They deserve airtime, they deserve attention, and they deserve to be looked into.
Setting, when we have children with disabilities and children without disabilities in the same classroom, we find that the children with disabilities imitate those without disabilities. Simple behaviors such as speech patterns, social graces, are habits that can be picked up from those without disabilities and imitated by those with the disabilities.
The people who experience disability later in their lives have a lot of challenges they need to overcome. Part of the challenge would be the attitude towards persons with disability. Now they have this disability. So how are they going to reconcile the two? The other thing is that they are now adjusting to support through life, something that they were not used to. So you find that this calls for psychological adaptation, social changes, at the onset of disability, and even biological changes.
Today, education is considered the critical software for development. But for it to effectively make a difference, there must be a cadre of competent teachers who are well-versed with diverse changing trends in the society. The teachers' continuous professional development programs are critical in the education sector to build the teachers' capacity.
The field of ABA provides a powerful source of intervention design, monitoring, and training to ensure students with autism receive maximum benefit from their educational experience in a wide range of settings, including the general ed environment.
If the patent we launched yesterday will be successful, the campaign will be extended to a broader page. Over the coming years, I'd like to see schools improving the lives of the disabled by putting a smile on their faces. We can do this by building a ramp which favors the physically impaired, those who are using crutches, white canes for the blind, and wheelchairs, and a sign language teacher and an interpreter, which would like to do when they grow up. Thank you.
Here in Kenya, we have had a number of
little pieces of legislation that have come to fore. For example, the Constitution of Kenya 2010, where we have Article 24 really coming out in terms of obligating us to realign our services, our resources in such a manner that our learners and children with special needs actually are able to access quality education. And we also want to say that in the Basic Education Act 2013, the Act also obligates the Cabinet Secretary to ensure that all children access quality education. And when we say all children, it is all children, those with special needs and disabilities and those without. And I want to say that even as much as you know that these pieces of legislation are in place, the policy has not been aligned.
An education system that cannot cater for those who have small chests and blunt knives, then is probably not a really inclusive education system. So what does authority do? Authority formulates laws, legislation, and policy to address some of those gaps. And that is the situation that has happened in Kenya. But then, and I think Kenyans will be very familiar with this, the law is very clear. In this country, we have laws and legislation. Like internationally, we are talking about the CRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, which is an authoritative international law that makes very clear pronouncement on inclusive education. We also do have the Constitution of Kenya, the Persons with Disabilities Act, the Basic Education Act, and the National Special Needs Education Policy Framework of 2009.
Why does the parent not want the kid to go to school? Is it because, one, the parent thinks that this person will not be able maybe to get employment in the future and support him or her in old age? Or is it because the parent is fearing that if this child goes to school, he or she might not get the care, the kindness that he's enjoying at home?
Where are we as far as the policy guidelines are concerned? And what approach do we intend, what direction do we intend to do in order to marry community-based rehabilitation approach to inclusive education implementation?
Can we have a policy provision that can deliberately make a provision that in any sector, in any institution that is addressing issues touching on persons with a disability, that a specific percent shall be people with disabilities?
As we follow that path that is leading us towards full inclusive education for learners with disabilities, we have to acknowledge that there are also other interventions that exist and at work. However, all decisions and all programmings and all interventions are made with the best interest of the child or the learner.
Your grant needs to be focused, clearly written, understandable, not overly ambitious. It's a danger for all of you, I know you. You're going to want to do more, but be realistic. And you need to tell the funding agency how you are going to help them accomplish their goals. And then how do you take a good or even a great idea and turn it into a fundable application? Here's the secret. A good proposal becomes clearly funded when you clearly tell them what your idea is, why they should fund it, and how the funding agency is going to benefit from your work. You want to make the reviewer's palms sweat. That means that they read the first paragraph or the first couple of paragraphs of your proposal and they say, this would be a crime if somebody didn't fund this.
There is a question of sustainability at times after the program or the project that you may be proposing about. What would be your comments about that area?
I haven't seen, or I'm actually missed any point where you have included the children with disability themselves taking part in the application process.
Sustainability is always a difficulty. You know that. It really is a danger of losing a program that is so wonderful when the funding runs out. We take great effort to bring in partners whose mission it is to do the kind of work that we're doing. So if it's a training program for university, for teachers, then we try to bring in all of the universities that would be doing the training and make them partners so that then once the grant funding is done, they can see that it's bringing in students to their institution and they are making tuition dollars, right? So some things are easy like that. Other ones are more difficult. I was trying to be economical with my presentation, and what I didn't mention is that we have a consumer advisory council that advises our organization in all areas, not just grant writing. But it's made up predominantly of family members, of parents of children with disabilities, or people themselves who have disabilities. Every time we have a grant proposal meeting, we actually invite someone that's a consumer representative to actually come in and be part of the brainstorming and then the grant writing when we can. I think there are better and more effective things that we could do, but the thing is that voice is really important. What we don't want to do is for me sitting in my office to come up with the program and then say, that's what you, the person with a disability, needs. I've decided for you. It will be wrong every time.
So we dive straight into the three issues that we want to try and tackle. The first issue, which is the issue, what issues are we dealing with in SME and inclusive education? Then how do we bridge the gap between policy and practice, and how do we measure? So I'll give them 2 minutes each to just talk to any of these issues of their interest, to try and cultivate this understanding. So allow me to start with you, Dr. Ojob.
Tanzania, first of all, unique in 3 ways. One, it says that, first of all, the only country which legally requires that children be educated in an inclusive setting. It is clear in its law. Second, it is far-reaching because it requires that inclusive education be provided both in the private schools and in the government schools. And then the most interesting part for me, it says that special schools are only to be for a transitional period towards inclusive schools.
Training of teachers in inclusive education is an option. So a teacher trainee can come in and choose to train in that area or not. So then there is a probability that in 1 year we may never have teachers trained in that area. And you can only create the future by looking at the present. That is one. The teachers who are outside there already trained in inclusive education, quite a sizable amount, are practicing in contexts that do not popularize inclusive education. There are people who when I go out there after I've given my presentation, I will ask them what I have talked about, and they will tell me that I did not hear you talk about this. There are people who will tell you exactly what I've talked about. There are people who will remind me to repeat what I said. We are in a classroom, whether it's a classroom, an inclusive classroom, whether it is a classroom of, a regular classroom, you'll find that there are varieties of people. The students think differently. They have learning abilities which are different. And that is the reason why, even in regular classrooms, you'll find some students getting A, others getting B, others getting C, and others getting D. So we must get prepared to handle this kind of thing. If you have a class of 40 students, know that you are not teaching 40 students, but you are teaching 40 individuals.
I'll give an example. Tanzania is all about Tanzania. They have a very good policy, which was done somewhere by people in Hokana. You go to the rural area, implementers, they don't know about it. What about our own country? Are teachers aware of these policies? We have guidelines, give them how to undergo these guidelines, how to promote inclusivity in our schools. Teachers, the parents, the community. We need to rethink that we have this policy. Do they fit our focus? Are they just there for the sake of it, or they are going to support us for inclusive education?
In relation to the evaluation, right at the start, after you've come up with a clear definition for inclusive education and a framework, you need to come up with a set of standards. And those standards will then act as indicators in terms of your evaluation. Evaluation has to be ongoing.
My question is that ethically logical to actually propose element of teacher training around inclusive education in the mainstream teacher training provisions? Thank you.
My concern is that there has not been really much being talked about the partnership between inclusive education, the policy, the framework, and the media. So what have you gone through, and maybe you can let us know what you've done in regards to the media.
Change will only come when you involve persons with disabilities. We can have all the papers here, but when you don't involve us to give our stories of what is special education, for me, I am what I am, a lawyer who says it is clear in the law because I went through special education. Those teachers are competent. They made me whom I am. Inclusion is beating about the bush. But thank you all of you for being so passionate about this.
Thank you very much.
I actually am going to go one step further and say there needs to be awareness raising. But when I talked earlier about getting people together to agree on what a definition for inclusive education and agree on a policy framework, even there you need awareness raising. Because government also needs to make, people need to make that paradigm shift. I'm going to respond to my the last comment here in relation to what I've just said. I absolutely agree with Sarah from Swaziland. When she says, if you're developing an inclusive education policy, it has to be a policy that goes across the ministry. So the example I had from South Africa was, I was the director for inclusive education. I was sitting in my office in the Inclusive Education Directorate, but we had an inclusive education policy, education and training policy, that was supposed to go across the system. But what happened was, because the inclusive education policy sat in my office, we were only supposed to look after the special schools. So what I did was, I made sure I was collaborating with the people from curriculum, from teacher management, from district development, so that we could all become involved in it. Otherwise, inclusion is not going to happen.
There is a boy called Glenn who sometimes does not come to school because of the level of his disability. He stays at home. He's from a very vulnerable home, and we usually go there to visit him, and there is no structured curriculum to be followed by such a child. So for the mother to be able to get food for the family, she has to tie the boy at home. She was chased away from her matrimonial home because of giving birth to a child with autism, which is not there in that particular family. So we are looking for a way, well-wishers, if you are there, to give us a home away from home, which has the conditions of home and also has the conditions of school, so that these children with autistic, those children with mental disability of very high levels can also be contained and get the learning developed in them.
As KICD, we don't just sit in the office and we reform the curriculum. We carry out a needs assessment. In 2006, we collected data in the whole country because we needed to see what are the views of our people, what do they want. And this is where I'm happy that the Ministry of Education have come out not only on access, but on equity. What are children getting from school? Not just going to school, but what are they acquiring?
There are policies such as Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Salamanca Statement, Dakar Conference, UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, that is the SDGs, on ensuring children with special needs more effectively access and benefit from inclusive schooling. Many countries, such as Sweden, England, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, USA, and Canada, have made significant progress complying with the international and their domestic inclusive education policies. In Meru County, Kenya, they appear to have been ineffective and teacher-parent collaboration policies, which was linked to poor status of inclusive education in public primary schools.
For some reasons. One, I think that we are aware of the East African community integration imperative. We are becoming one community, and therefore we should integrate in wholeness. The issue of disability needs to come to the fore. We also have obligations under Article 24 2B of the UNCRPD, which many of us have ratified. And the reminder in Article 24 2B is that state parties that we are should ensure an inclusive education for people with disabilities on an equal basis with the others. This means failure to provide inclusive education contravenes the objectives of the Convention and Article 5 of the Convention, which are on inclusive education and prohibiting discrimination, respectively.
And what I can say is that special needs education, inclusive education, is developing and still growing, although with challenges. And there are factors that influence training, support, and promoting learning participation and development, which includes implementation and management of functional assessment, misunderstanding about what special needs and inclusive education is, lack of adaptation of curriculum materials, alternative communications, modifications of the colleges, and understanding of what disability is, which influences inclusion and exclusion of some categories of students.
Just doing a male mentor program alone isn't enough, is it? It's not going to achieve inclusive education. So we also need to think about how all of these things fit together in a much wider. And I think something that really our programme is funded by the UK government, it's run by an NGO. Ultimately, it is up to the governments of the countries themselves, and I think Kenya has taken a lot of leadership in developing its inclusive education programme. So I think that's admirable. I think we still need to be clear about who and which ministry is responsible. There's a temptation often to put disability issues within the Ministry of Social Welfare rather than within the Ministries of Education. Education issues are always the Ministry of Education's responsibility.
Because a child has disability, they have their schools. Where we are meaning special schools. And I think that is the greatest point of incidence for advocacy.
Education actually is supposed to ensure that everyone who goes through that system, they acquire knowledge, skills, and information that will help them become valuable individuals in their communities and also in their places of work, because they want to become productive. That is what education should be, its purpose. But whom is it meant to? Is it a section or is it for everyone? SDG 4 is asking us as a UN declaration that we should not leave anyone behind.
Opinion leaders were not very vocal, particularly the chiefs and the area headmen and even the church leaders and all those leaders. Most of them were not either willing to cooperate or to give their position about inclusive education. You hear the question has been here on the floor. My colleague has been put on spot to say, are you supporting special needs or inclusive? And sometimes some of us fall in between there and we wonder what to say. But as the saying goes, we are so much for the inclusive.
If you are here and you are an entrepreneur, if you have the conceptual competence, do you have a cognitive and analytical thinking? So we have to start teaching our children from primary and secondary to have cognitive and analytical thinking. Let them be able to solve problems so that we prepare them in the future to become entrepreneurs.
When you give me 5,000 loan, how much can I do with 5,000? When I sell sweets on the street, how much rent can I raise? When we had post-election, this electioneering period for 6 months, where did persons who are selling sweets on the street, where did they go to? They went back to Kinango, am I right? So the rest of us, especially those of us who are employed, we watched electioneering from the comfort of our houses, knowing what? We had a salary, true. We had medical cover, true. And somebody was paying for your loan as you sat. Are we together? It is from where, that point that I'm thinking. And I'm asking myself, why shouldn't a person with disability be employed?
When you have a disability, it does not mean that you cannot do anything. And a disability should not stop you from doing anything. And another thing I want to tell you, this one goes to the adults inside. People with disability need opportunity, not sympathy.
Always accept yourself. Do you understand?
Yes.
You should always accept. Maybe you are sitting with a person who is normal and he or him is telling you that I can't sit with you, I can't do anything with you. Let me tell you one thing. You should always, even if they don't want to sit with you or they don't want to listen to you, you can go and sit with for example, another student and discuss something. Okay? Always accept yourself.
It is not easy to organize a big conference like this one. And through you, please send our regards to the welfare team. These are people that are normally not appreciated. They have done a good job. Even in these 2 days, I can see very bright faces, and I hope you have added 1 kilogram. I would like to thank finally persons with disabilities in this room. Your presence shows inclusion. And thank you for coming and making it a point that you attend this conference. Join in the advocacy. Join the institutions that are looking for inclusion. The development partners, thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for contributing. I can see a list of so many organizations that have contributed to this conference. Thank you very much. With these remarks, I would like to declare that this conference is closed. Thank you very much.
Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tulilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike, umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.